And on the topic of ensuring that you're staying most up to date and selecting the right frameworks, I'd like to understand what emerging technologies we see will have the most impact on the supply chain processes and on WMSs in the next 3 to 5 years. And Eamon, if you can keep us going and let us know what you've been seeing on the market.
So I mean, what I'm seeing more and more of in warehouses today are autonomous vehicles or drones. Okay, now maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago, there was an industry built around what they called automatic guided vehicles. These vehicles typically stayed on kind of rail tracks, even though they weren't physical rail tracks. They had fixed wires in the floor that they would follow. Obviously, that's moved on now, and with the creation of the technologies that are guiding these automated vehicles around the warehouse with limited constraints, to be fair. So where a human can walk, then so can these vehicles as well. So there's more and more of these robots, bots, autonomous vehicles going around warehouses. And ultimately what it's doing is it's limiting the amount of physical exercise and walking that warehouse operators are having to endure. I mean, if you look at a typical warehouse that could be 100 meters long by 70 meters wide. Well, if you're walking that thing 3 or 4 times in a day, yes, it's probably good for your step count, and it's probably good for your physical being at some level, but it's a lot to have to go through that day in, day out. It's an awful lot. And also, it's kind of like, if you could take the walking away, because that's the bit that we do naturally as humans. There's no skill in that. That's just what we do. If you could take that piece away and have them fixed to a zone, and then they're picking, and then that's the added value the human brings and just deploys what they've picked into the AGV or into the robot or into the autonomous vehicle, and then it goes on its way to the next zone that it needs to visit. So there are many others. I mean, somebody's already mentioned it, artificial intelligence, machine learning, that they're the latest trends and buzzwords. And again, it's all about how can a system learn the human behavior and start to predict some of the outcomes. And ultimately, I think that the reality is there are always going to be people that don't believe in it and think that the human brain will bring a better outcome. I would argue against that, and I've seen examples where human bias causes systematic issues. Let's say, as humans, we kind of mess up a system world. It's typically us that causes the problem. So I think having AI and ML in solutions, it's something that isn't going away. It's going to get more and more. And then things like augmented reality, right? Vision picking, rather than people holding a piece of paper or holding a radio data terminal, it's a bit, and we've got the technology in our cars now already, right? With heads up displays. You don't have to look anywhere. It's right in front of you. So that's kind of some of the changes that I'm starting to see, where people are looking at other industries and saying, actually, they do that in the car industry or the automotive industry. Could we bring that into our world? And they're starting to experiment and bring more and more of these kind of technologies into the warehouse space.
Robert Reith, what are some of the technologies that you're actually seeing applied in the WMS and general space?
I think most of them are already mentioned by Eamon. For me, also automated storage and retrieval systems, also called the ASRS systems, will become more and more common in warehouses in the next few years. Same goes for the robotic and process automation. Automatic storage systems are developed more and more. Also the hardware. So there has to be a lot of intelligence in telling those machines where to put what and how to retrieve it. So there you have the link to the AI and machine learning, even stated. Some people think also about augmented reality and virtual reality. I myself think there's limited functionality in our branch for this. It's more in the gaming, etc. But eventually you could also think of those kinds of developments.
Robert, how about you from your side?
Yeah, Eamon talked about mechanization, of course, and I always say it starts with data, data, and then looking to cloud solutions where it is easier to manage the data. It can also provide added value also for the mechanization. And what we also see is that the data that WMS solutions are collecting want to be used by our customers, but also by the customers of our customers. So that is also a change in that the customers of our customers want to use our data. So yeah, what I believe in is that the biggest added value towards the future and changes will be data.
So there's a key element that, Robert, you've addressed quite often today already, which is implementation and integration. Do you think you can share with us a specific instance where effective supply chain integration positively influenced business performance?
Yeah, I can, I think, and then I can use a customer of us in cycling supplies, and already started to act like this back in before the millennium appears, so to say. So really smart, using a WMS, using TMS, using already and not as enhanced like now, but using integration with the carriers and already having B2C and B2B logistics with the cycling supplies. So already usage of 4 or 5 solutions back in 2000 to optimize their supply chain. So yeah, so that is not new. The only new thing nowadays is the easiness of integration with the modern technologies. Integration in these days was much harder than it is today. But using multiple solutions to get as much as efficiency out of the supply chain in the integration between all the steps has been there all quite a long time. Only the implementation, the technology which you can use nowadays is much more advanced than back in the days.
And Eamon, from your side, can you list a specific instance that you're aware of where integration implementation positively impacted business performance?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I work with a client who was one of, if not the largest builders merchant here in the UK. They grew through acquisition, and when we started to talk to them about their digital transformation, let's call it that, they had 17 companies that acted as 17 companies. Okay, now some of those companies were complementary to each other. So we started to look into the synergies across all of their active network, and we looked at it in kind of 3 ways. Okay, so the first one was the vertical integration. So how do you integrate them from, let's say, from manufacturing through to sale? Yeah, was there any synergies there that we could save? I mean, if you're making products and you're selling it to different brands, the question would be, rather than making it in 3 different companies, could you make them all together and just label them different, right? So there was some examples that we looked at there with them. But I think the biggest one was the horizontal integration, where we started looking across all of their portfolio of businesses. Okay, so for example, if you were going to build a bathroom, yeah, and you go into a bathroom manufacturer and you start looking at a sink, a toilet, and a bath and a shower, well, that would say to me that you're building a bathroom, right? Now, what also goes hand in hand with the bathroom is tiles. So if you've got a business that also sells tiles, why wouldn't you then bring those 2 things together, as opposed to allow the customer to make his own decision? So we started looking at kind of like activities like this with them, and ultimately stitching the company together like one organization, as opposed to 17 different companies. And the final result was that, you know, they were making better, more sensible decisions that were driven by data that was fed to them from the system. So they were able to point their customers in the right direction to be able to optimize the outcome of not just them, but also the customer. So they could go to, I mean, we've heard the term one-stop shop, right? You go in, you know what you want, you can buy, and obviously there has to be the right level of commercial models that sit behind all of this. But from a customer experience, it was much, much better with the optimized outcome through, as I say, with a decisions being made driven by data.
Robert Reith, from your side, as you're working with a lot of partners, where have you seen a specific instance where integration has played like a significant impact on the positive business outcomes?
Yeah. Well, I think that is like Eamon ended with, it's the data, and not only the data, but the real-time data. Nowadays, we have the techniques to have access to real-time data of all the partners in the supply chain. And that helps us enormously to make the planning more easy, make real-time deliveries more easy, etc. So if we have dock scheduling, we have yard management, we have slot planning, etc. And then and also for inventory, having the right inventory at the right place at the right time. If we share data within the supply chain, that will make it all more easy and more smoothly.
So we've discussed quite a lot of industry trends, developments, namely through the topics of AI, robotics, machine learning, and data. And these are all things that are intriguing. We see a lot of positive developments. So Robert Reith, I was wondering if you could tell me if there's any industry trends or developments that you're starting to find particularly concerning, that you're thinking, okay, we gotta take a closer look at this and see if it's the direction we want to be heading.
Yeah, then I was when I read this question, I was immediately thinking about real-time monitoring. The applications you see today are not meant to do a lot manually using the keyboard, but they are mainly showing dashboardings and event-driven actions and only acting on exceptions. So and that can be done if you have the good data analytics, if you have real-time monitoring, and you can make predictive analysis. And in that perspective, the whole visibility of the supply chain is really more visible in dashboarding and tooling.
And Robert, from your side, are there any trends or things that you're finding concerning starting to arise as well?
Now, yeah, we talk about data and we talk about AI, and data can help a lot, can support a lot in decision making. But most important, of course, is the quality of the data, and that will be that is also a kind of challenge and a way we need to find to preserve that quality of data. Else we will use data for wrong purposes, or we take wrong decisions on data. So part of all the data is also, Eamon used the word governance, to have governance on that data. So that is even important as only collecting data. So that is a bit, can I call it a concern? No, but we need to stay on top of the quality of the data.
Eamon, are there any additional concerns that you're seeing in the industry?
No, not really. Look, I think that the reality is, and I think the news and the press put it out there probably every day, right? It's clear that the supply chains, they are growing very complex now. I mean, it's no longer a chain anymore; it's a network. Okay, it's got high volatility. Depending on what happens within that network, can have a real huge impact. I mean, there's a number that I could use as examples. I mean, the Suez Canal blockage. I mean, that caused absolute chaos around the world, right? Yeah. COVID, right? We're all very familiar with what that done, right? It caused massive thing, and it made people sit back and realize and accept how volatile their world is. Okay, and then without going into the same and repeating what the guys have said, the answer or the direction that we're going in, or I'm seeing the trends are, is all about having that increased visibility so that you can make data-driven decisions earlier, rather than waiting for the outcome and then having to make a decision. So, you know, if you're buying goods in the Far East and you're shipping them to the US, that's going to take a period of time to get from A to B. But if something happens partway through that journey and you have no clue where your goods are, right, because you've got no visibility, you have to wait until they arrive. And it could be that they're 2, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days late. Now you've upset and you've disappointed a number of customers within the US. So if you knew that was going to happen, you could have taken a different route and possibly procured your equipment somewhere local in the US, maybe at a higher cost, but at least you're answering the demand of your customers. Okay, it's a temporary fix. So I think that visibility is absolutely key, and ultimately, you know, understanding and the recognition of how complex these networks are now.
So as we've discussed quite often, and Eamon, you've addressed a few times in some of our earlier questions today, the decision around building versus buying is often influenced by scalability and speed, which buying often provides, whereas providing a long-term solution where it's very custom and you know what you're going to go in the long term can sometimes be aligned with build. Can you perhaps tell us a little bit more on how any organization might look at their processes and prioritize what's more important for them, scalability and speed versus long term, and where do those things marry?
I think, yeah, for me, I think and we mentioned it earlier about, you know, the business case, right? For me, it's having a clear vision of what those triggers are. So, for example, if you want to release a new product and you've got given yourself a deadline because there's something else happening within the market that is dictating on the time, that will probably drive you in one direction. Okay. If you've got all the time in the world and there's no pressures on you on time, you might then look at, you know, how complex your business is. And do you want to then spend that time, effort, and energy in creating your own? I suppose a third dimension to that is if you're going to take what you know, don't know is what you don't know. Okay. Now, when so if you're building, you're going to build within your own knowledge set, which is understandable because that's what you will do. Whereas if you go to the market where a vendor such as Devanti have 30 years experience working in different micro verticals, seeing different logistical problems and have answers to that, will you have that knowledge within your team? Question, right? So when you start to look at all that, it's kind of, again, I don't want to sound like I'm sitting on the fence, but there is really, it's all going to be driven by the factors of each company. And I think, like I say, for me, I remember when I was younger, somebody once said to me, measure twice, cut once. Okay. Now, for me, it's the same sort of thing. Really review what you're doing, really review what you need to do before you even, you know, embark on making a decision, because sometimes people make these decisions early and they get them wrong. And then they don't find out for another 6 months, 12 months. And then by that point, they're so entrenched in the project that they can't really reverse back out. So, as I say, for me, measure twice, cut once.
And Robert Reith, from your side, I mean, going from the perspective of a built solution that already exists, I imagine being within an organization that's existed for 30 years, there's always equally experienced that question, even from the purchasing side. What do we prioritize, speed and scalability or long term? So from the scope of the build perspective, from within Quarex and from within WMS, how and why do different customers, prospects prioritize these things from the build perspective?
Yeah, from a build perspective, we think it's also depending on what your short-term and long-term objectives are. Because on the short term, of course, you want to make what your customers are asking at this time in moment. For the long run, you know that in the end, you have to adapt more AI functionality, for example. So we have to get that into our application. What we also have to see is what is the core of our business. We have to be, if we have to be best in practice, we have the best in what we are doing. So we need to have the best, for example, put away algorithm. We need to have the best picking allocation, the best wave and batch picking algorithms. That is where we should be the best, and that what should we do for the long run. If we can, and in the end, it will be a mix. It will be a mix of short-term and long-run objectives. And of course, we also don't have infinite capacity, so we have to make the right decisions. And there is a gray area in functionality. For example, yard and dock management. What should you embed into the WMS system? And where should you say, okay, now we have a cutoff because now it's becoming too complex and we have to see if we have a better system that can do that better than we can, and then join forces and make an interface. And like Robert said, that's becoming more and more easy. Nowadays, we know the APIs. Most people are more and more familiar with that. RESTful APIs, and systems communicate very easily together. But I think Robert can tell you more about that.
Please.
Yeah, I always say there is only one constant, and that is change. And as a software vendor, we need to be able to deal with that change. We need to be flexible, and flexibility is needed in technology and also in people, because at the end it is always people's work. And the flexibility in technology we try to find in using the right technical stack, so to say, and looking to Corax, be really an open application that is different than 10, 15 years back. So it should be really easy to connect to our WMS and the other way around. For example, we have a mobile app. If a customer of us want to develop his own mobile app, it can use our APIs for picking or for put away or for, so that is how we look to the world. Be flexible, and you will never develop something today which will stay or last for 10 years. You need to change, adapt new technology within 5 years or 4 years. But starting with development today, you need to think about it and do it in a way that you are able to adjust, enhance in an easy way. It needs effort, but yeah, be flexible. That is really important.
Thank you, gents. We're now coming to the end of the discussion, and I appreciate everyone's great time. So what I would ask is maybe you can give us one last stray thought that you had that you didn't get a chance to mention before, and then perhaps how you can get in touch with us to continue the conversation if you have outstanding questions. And Eamon, why don't you start by closing us out?
Yeah, no, look, I mean, it's been great to have or share the stage with you three of you. I mean, it's been a great conversation. I think, to be honest, within retail and e-com, I think we've covered a lot of the challenges around, where we can play an active part as organizations. I think more holistically, though, I think that we are starting to see a major shift in the way retail is working. And again, without repeating all the things we've said, online purchasing, the way people make decisions, all that stuff, it's really, really changing the way that we operate and the way that we see retail. So I think that, again, just to sort of summarize where we were at, that for me is kind of like the major shift that I'm seeing, and it's been getting more and more exaggerated over the last 2 or 3 years. I guess since COVID, it really accelerated the way certain things change. And let's be honest, we will never go back to what we were doing pre-COVID. Yeah, every business has changed, and it's changed forever. It will never change and go back. So we've just got to embrace that. We've got to accept it, and we've got to move on with it. So yeah, on behalf of the Innovex supply chain team, I'd like to thank the 2 guys from Davanti for supporting us in this. Certainly, if anybody that's listening or viewing this now wants to get in touch with Innovex, you've got our website, innovex.com. There's plenty of information on there which supports not just retail e-com, but other micro verticals where we've got some interesting information that we can share. And by all means, just give us a shout on there. You know, there's plenty of information of how to contact the various people within the organization. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Eamon. Robert Reith?
Yeah, I don't know if I think Eamon mentioned that in the beginning, but in retailing, the omni-channel selling is becoming more and more common. Huh? You sell with brick and mortar stores. We have e-commerce platforms. Even you have your mobile apps, etc., etc. And I think there is that mix. The mobile app you order your order with can be a customized or a built thing. Not a bought thing, because there you have your specialities. You have a lot of marketing involved, of course, on that end. But at the back end, to organize the whole logistics, there will be more buying pre-built solutions to deal with. And then if you have this omni-channel integration, then the mix will be more and more applicable.
Thank you. And Robert, if you could close us out today, let us know where they can find Davanti, when they can contact you, and also any closing thoughts.
I really like this,
Around.
like doing this. This is not something we do every day. I like really the discussion with you all people, all knowledgeable people. You can find Corax on the internet, of course, corax.com. I'm looking forward doing this more often, and maybe sometimes for a real audience live. That would be nice.
Yeah, this was
Thank
a good
you.
training.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you all for joining. If there was a couple of topics that really stood out to me today, it was the immense importance of data, how it's managed across these platforms, how it's integrated, that we are shifting away from just a chain and more into a network of communications, the impact of AI, machine learning, robotics, and how all of these things need to communicate, and the immense benefits that can come from both sides, and how many partners there are available on the market. Of course, Innovex Supply Chain and Davanti are here to answer any questions. And thank you so much, Eamon, Robert Reith, and Robert, for joining today. And thank you for our audience for tuning in. Stay tuned. We'll be having more of these discussions on WMS topics across all these micro verticals at the broad scale. And find us online. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Alrighty.